Hey everyone, it's Corey with Casual EDC and bringing you a different little bit of a review here. I'm in the car, kind of a busy day running around with school and a couple other things I gotta get taken care of, but I am carrying the knife today that we're gonna be reviewing, which is the Thumbstud version of the Tactile knife company Rockwall. I've never filmed a video in this style in a car with the front-facing camera, so you're gonna have to give me a break if things don't focus. Which I can tell this is having a hard time focusing. But this is a Thumbstud version of the Rockwall. This one is in 20 CV. I wasn't going to bother waiting for the Magna Cut drop. I just didn't feel the need for it, especially on such a thin and slicey knife, which I'll get into. You're looking at 20 CV blade steel made in the USA. These are made in Texas. Everything on this is titanium, obviously, besides your blade. You have a titanium pocket clip, Tactile's milling texture that they do across the handles, and this one is running on bearings. All their knives so far, besides the Bexer, their slip joint, are running on bearings. This knife is really well done. I wasn't expecting to like this knife as much as I do. I like thin knives. I like slicey knives, as I'm sure most of you know. But for whatever reason, wasn't expecting to like this one. Part of what I didn't think I was going to like about it was the way that these thumb studs are done, which you can see hopefully if I block my face, this will focus. You can see how deep the thumb studs sit in these cutouts. And the lock bar access, I was a little bit worried about as well, and it kind of bothered me at first when I unboxed the knife. Not so much the thumb studs. That bothered me seeing the pictures, but in reality, it is very easy to get behind it and open it up with no issue. And then as for the lock itself, you can see the lock up on this is it's pretty much like 50%, and it ended up with assembly and disassembly, it changed a little bit, but it's always had solid lock up. There's no play up or down or side to side at the current moment. But getting to that lock, I didn't really like at first. There's no real access. You can see it doesn't really protrude besides just a touch of jimping that they put on it. And activating the lock down there, it works. You can see I can put my thumb down here and I can get it to drop onto my finger, and it's crazy smooth. It drops right shut with a little flick after that. But what I found myself doing is going up into this area where that funky thumb stud cutout is, and because it's the deepest cut, so it's easiest to get your thumb into, from what I find comfortable. I know Kevin from Lefty EDC really liked this left-handed closing it, which if I stick it in my left hand, I don't like closing it as much, but I'm also not left-handed, so I'm not quite used to doing this. It's something I'm capable of doing. I have no issue using knives left-handed and opening and closing them. I fidget with them all the time, left-handed and right-handed. But that being said, it's definitely comfortable to use right-handed once you kind of find that landing spot for your finger. Some people might want to use that jimped area down lower where the blade drops further. Other people are going to want to stay up top like I do and maybe get a little more access to the lock bar. So that's something to keep in mind if you're looking to pick one of these up. Cutting ability with this is going to be unmatched by a lot of stuff. It has a really, really thin hollow grind. I believe it's a hollow grind. That's what it looks like to me. And it comes down to a super thin edge, and the blade stock itself is very, very thin. I only have a Kershaw blur here in the car to compare it to, but you can see the two of them next to each other. You can see the blur is definitely thicker. So, and the blur comes to a thin edge as well. That has a hollow grind on it, but not nearly as thin overall as this Rockwall is. Another thing in terms of thinness is just the overall thickness of the handle. I don't have any specs or measurements on me, but it's probably less than 0.4 inches thick. It's definitely not half an inch, that's for sure. That being said, with how thin it is in the handle, it's actually really comfortable to get a hammer grip on this. Thin knives tend to bite and push into hands in weird ways in a hammer grip, forcing you to kind of hold them out in your fingers more. I actually found this knife to be very comfortable in a hammer grip, and a lot of the use that I had with this tended to be with this hammer grip, mostly in a reverse grip, because I used this to strip a lot of wire. Actually, I was working on redoing some outlets that I had with some bad wiring in the bedroom. But yeah, it ended up being very comfy, and part of what makes this knife comfortable, despite being thin, is that it is kind of blocky. It's got chamfered edges, but there's no angles, and nothing is super contoured, so it doesn't become thin against your hand or against your fingers. Nothing's too thin where it's going to push and create a lot of pressure in one small area. Concentrated. The pocket clip really works well for the ergos because it is so low profile. You can see it there, it barely sticks up. That being said, the pocket clip is something that they missed on with this knife. I never handled the flipper Rockwall, but the pocket clip on this really sucked. It didn't go into jeans. It did not go into cargo shorts. The only thing that it fit into out of the box was a pair of like really thin pajama pants. I don't remember the brand or anything, but you know, those real thin ones, not the fleecy kind, but the thinner ones, was all that it fit into. So I ended up bending this pocket clip, just pulling up on it. You can hear the spring on it. It's not crazy tight because I can just get my finger under it and move it. That being said, I did bend it, and it was sitting above, so it would click when I did this, and somehow it stopped doing that. I guess I might have taken it apart after bending it. I don't really remember. This was a couple weeks ago. But anyway, it ended up sitting flat, but now it lost enough of that spring tension that it works now for pants. I have like a thinner pair of shorts on today, despite it being 35 degrees and snowing. And it fit fine in this pocket. So that issue kind of worked itself out, but something to keep in mind for sure if you wear jeans or any kind of pants with a thicker pocket than really thin shorts would have. That's going to be a little bit of an issue. You might have to bend it, and you might have to deal with that pocket clip clicking a little bit, just sitting above the handle scale. You might have to tap, you know, if you tap that or whatever, you might hear it clicking, but that might be the best way to get it working in the pocket. I will say I do experience that issue with the pen that I have from Tactile Turn constantly. That pocket clip bends all the time, and it annoys the shit out of me. But it's something you just deal with, and you bend back. It's a pain, but it's not too hard to do, just annoying. One of the last really good things I want to talk about is the thumb studs on this. Let's see. Is it going to focus? Kind of, sort of, not really. There's a really nice, like, I talked about this in my unboxing video. These thumb studs have a twisting milled lines in them that kind of reminds me of like rifling in like a barrel of a gun. It's that twisted bore that you'd see if you were looking down a rifled barrel. It makes for a really unique and interesting texture that you don't notice necessarily, but it gives it this appearance of being on an angle despite these coming out straight. Like, that's straight across, but if you're looking at it, the milling kind of makes it look like it's canted downward like this. It's just something a little neat about that, but it makes for a really nice texture, easy to grab your finger. Like I said, it sits just proud of that cutout, so you can get behind it, as I miss a flip with it, but you can get behind it no problem. And I think that milling that they have done on these really works in getting just a little bit extra traction on this. And as I said, this knife is incredibly smooth. I just have some gunny glide in this. I didn't do anything special. This does have a detent ball ramp, so that helps with that disengagement a lot, and this disengages from the detent ball very early. Right here is the point where the detent ball is getting ready to go back up onto the tang, and you can see it just immediately moves due to that detent ball ramp. You're not going to be able to see it because of the lighting, but that's where we're at. And just that little bit, and it's already up on the ramp and can shut much easier. So definitely a quality of life thing. Like seeing detent ball ramps on higher end knives. I think it's something that every knife after a $200 price point should have. It makes the action so much better. It's never going to hurt. And it's something I'd like to see done more, because the knives I've handled with it, you can definitely tell the difference. Overall, the Rockwall, the Thumbstud version anyway, this one here, is a really, really solid knife. I'm not sure if I'm going to be keeping this or not, but it's really a good contender. The 20CV is a great blade steel. It's all USA made. The folks over at Tactile Turn, I know, stand behind their products, as well as their knives with Tactile Knife Company. And the Bexter was a great knife as well. I ended up selling that to Sharpened Blade here on YouTube as well as Instagram. You can see that now. He did post an unboxing video just recently of that, so I will link his channel in the description below. But yeah, the slip joint was really nice, and then this is another good performing and really nice, enjoyable piece from Tactile Knife Company. I don't know if I'll ever buy a flipper Rockwall, but maybe I'll handle one. And I know that they are working through Kickstarter right now for a chef's knife. And depending on the price, maybe that's something that I can back, and we can do a review on that in the future. But overall, very nicely done by Tactile Knife Company, not Titanium Knife Company. Yeah, nicely done. The Rockwall's a good knife. If this aesthetic speaks to you, if you like the thinness of this, if you like the quiet carry weight point, but you want something USA made with different materials, very similar knives, and something really compelling coming from Tactile Knife Company. So I'm going to wrap it up there before I start rambling on more than 12 minutes talking to myself in the car. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask them. And with that, have a great rest of your day. Take care.